Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Hi, and welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kelly Livingston. Today, we're exploring something that every human experiences, but few of us are ever actually taught: how to feel. Not think about our feelings, not analyze our feelings, but feel them in our bodies, stay with them, and move through them instead of around them. I'm joined by someone who has devoted her life and her medicine to that very work, Dr. Jenn Rapkin, naturopathic physician, body worker, former dancer, and what she lovingly calls a frequent feeler. Her new book, The Feeling Muscle, is a guide for anyone who's ever been overwhelmed by emotion, disconnected from emotion, or afraid of what might happen if they finally let themselves feel. In this conversation, we talk about felt emotion, why the body is the missing link in emotional healing, why so many of us have been conditioned to swallow hard feelings, and how returning to our emotional life is actually a return to wholeness. This is a deep, beautiful, and very human conversation. Let's dive in. Today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Jenn Rapkin to the Vital Spirit podcast. Dr. Jenn Rapkin is a naturopathic physician, body worker, former dancer, and frequent feeler with more than 25 years of experience in integrative mental health, mind-body medicine, and body-centered therapies. Her new book, The Feeling Muscle: How Felt Emotion Can Help You Sit With and Outlast Hard Feelings, chronicles her personal and professional transformation from physician to shepherd of feelings. In her clinical practice, her bodywork table is a place to hold space for, validate, and give voice to her patient's inner felt emotion by combining a gentle listening touch with dialogue, imagery, and self-awareness. She has balanced deep inner reflection with a rich and fascinating life, from growing up on Nantucket Island, go-go dancing in the Guggenheim Museum, and living as an expat in Barcelona, to raising two soulful and spirited children in Connecticut. Today, we're diving into the wisdom of felt emotion, why it matters to feel hard feelings, why the body is often the missing link in emotional health, and the cultural forces that train us to suppress the very experiences that would set us free. So welcome and thank you for being here. And I'd love to also add a little personal note that I did have the pleasure of working under you in clinic at the University of Bridgeport, where you taught me mind-body medicine. I think that was back in about 2011 or so. So thank you so much for being here, for writing this book, which I have here, and I know we're going to jump into it. And before I start with questions, maybe you can just share a little bit of how you found naturopathy and naturopathic medicine in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say it's an honor to be here, Dr. Kelly, and you were always a rock star in my eyes from when you were a student to what you have become and created, and I'm just grateful to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So, how did I find naturopathic medicine? I was living in New York City. I was a dancer, and I had given up dance, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had luckily found, I was going through some health issues of my own, and I found a acupuncturist in Brooklyn who changed my life. She might as well have been a naturopath. And she affected me so profoundly. I basically said to her, I want to do what you do. And she was the one that said, because I said, oh, should I look into acupuncture programs? She said, look into naturopathic medicine. She's like, it's a really cool and upcoming field. And I was, blessed to follow her advice.
That's amazing. I've loved asking this question and hearing all the different stories of how we've all found this magical medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then tell me a little bit about, I know that you describe yourself as a frequent feeler, and I'm sure that's part of what motivated you to write the book. So tell me a little bit about what that means. What does that mean to our listeners?
Sure. Let me explain a little bit about myself as a young person, and then I can sort of
Yeah.
yeah. So for as long as I can remember, I am somebody who feels my emotions, my feelings so profoundly, and I feel them in my body. I feel, you know, rejection, embarrassment, frustration, joy, love, wonder within myself. It swirls, right? It
Mm.
swirls and it spirals in me. Now, my parents, who are immensely loving people and incredibly well intentioned, also believed that young people should not be subjected to or exposed to hard stuff. So my parents protected me from hard topics in the world, hard, difficult conversations. They didn't model dealing with hard, like confrontation between the two of them. Didn't talk about hard emotions and feeling and sharing emotions. So I embodied that. I internalized that. And as a result, became somebody, almost an expert at avoiding feelings and evading my feelings. And it wasn't until my mid-20s when I really had to take a good look at that, because I was somebody who, as an introvert by nature, had really retreated from the world. It's
Mm.
like if you retreat from situations and friendships and relationships that might cause messy, complicated feelings, because I didn't want to feel and I didn't know how to manage messy, complicated feelings. The easy thing to do is sort of retreat from that. And I faced a point in my life where I didn't I wanted to live a more full life. So a frequent feeler, that is a long story, a long way around explaining that a frequent feeler is somebody who feels emotions in their bodies, but not just within themselves. They navigate and manage
Mm.
feelings. They feel the feelings of others. They feel the energy of others, the energy in a room and situations. And so they're navigating day to day, sometimes minute to minute, navigating how to manage these feelings and to distinguish, is that coming from me? Is it coming from outside myself? A frequent feeler is an amalgam of emotional intelligence and high sensitivity, highly sensitive person.
Okay. That's really helpful. And if someone is listening and they think, I might be a frequent feeler, what are some of the hallmarks or signs that someone might be a frequent feeler like yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think, for me, and when I work with folks that are frequent feelers, or oftentimes the word that is used, like I have therapists that refer their patients to me
Mm.
if their patients are in the word is somatic. And what that means
Okay.
to them, right, to the therapist, and they try to explain to their client, is that there's somebody that navigates and manages emotions within themselves and has to kind of figure out how to regulate. That's kind of like a hot button topic, right? How to manage and regulate their emotions. So if
Right.
somebody will come to me, what I try to do and try to help somebody understand that part of themselves and give themselves permission to both be aware of feelings in their bodies, right? In their bodies, so be able to invite feelings to not only to enter into the body, but invite yourself and give yourself permission to experience them. And then take it a step further and allow yourself to have a vocabulary for being a frequent feeler, which
Mm.
could be as simple as saying, I feel my feelings. I feel my anxiety in my chest. I feel my
Mm-hmm.
loss in my gut. I feel my contentment throughout my body. I feel my rage in my head. It could also be images. It doesn't have to be words. For some people, it's colors and images and music and memories. But giving your feelings a vocabulary is is it empowers people
Mm-hmm.
to own and accept and embrace parts of themselves.
Absolutely. I find it's really interesting when someone comes into the office and they say, maybe they're on a medication or they've been diagnosed with something and they say, oh, I'm on that for my depression or my anxiety. And I say, well, can you describe that a little bit in your own words? What does that mean for you? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Right.
Mhm.
And you'll get such a varied response. And sometimes they don't have words to give to it. And I think that that's very disempowering when we can't name and describe and notice, because that takes away our ability to do anything about it, right? If we just kind of have this blanket statement, oh, it's that depression again. Well, what does that really mean? What does that feel like? So I love that you talk about that as well. Can you tell me a little bit, for someone who maybe is not familiar with this at all? And I should also say, some people I would say feel almost excessively, right? And then some people don't feel emotion in the body at all, right? So describe a bit more the difference between a felt emotion or a felt sense versus thinking about an emotion or talking about an emotion. Can you give that some language for someone who's not familiar?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, right? Because so I break down in the book our emotional experience into three parts.
Oh,
One
okay.
one being the felt experience, the body's experience of the emotion. The second being our analytical, intellectual, or cognitive experience. And then the third being the expressive and behavioral. And I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
So let's say you're saying, I am sad. I feel sad. Our cognitive, intellectual part of ourselves will be able to label that. We'll be able to notice and label that you're feeling sad. You'll be able to understand what made you sad, possibly, maybe understand who made you sad, and can help you formulate a plan or analyze, what to do with that sadness, how to go forward with that sadness. The behavioral expressive part of ourselves will express that sadness. Maybe a single tear, maybe weeping, maybe nothing, maybe a feeling of a deep hole in
Mm.
the chest. But that then I've sort of jumped ahead of myself. The physical experience of sadness is that what does sadness feel like inside? It might feel like a hole. It might feel like a burning behind the eyes. It might feel like a heaviness in the heart. So I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
when we go up into our heads and start analyzing and having narratives around our sadness, that's an important part of being human, right? We need to have narrative. We need to make sense. We need to talk about it. But that's separate from the pre-verbal or non-verbal experience in the body of sadness.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's a skill that, and to your point, sometimes we're not raised in a family where we're taught to notice or name our feelings or
Hmm.
work through, repair. And sometimes we're just not taught how to experience a feeling even in the moment, right? Let alone work through the feeling. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the messages that we are taught and that we are given throughout our lives are basically, I wrote this down because I would love to I am very curious. One thing I really love is to pull out things in our everyday language that point to these concepts. So,
Yeah.
so while the concept of felt emotion might really feel like it's unknown to people, we use words to describe these things all the time, right?
Okay.
So can I just take like a 30 seconds? I,
Absolutely.
I want to read a couple metaphors and phrases that we use for felt emotion. So
Okay.
lump in my throat, choked up, heavy heart, makes my blood boil, weak in the knees, jumping out of my skin, scared stiff, on edge, shaken up, on pins and needles, bent out of shape. So
Yeah.
think about how often we use, and that's just a sampling, right? But think about how often we use these words. And then to the point that I was making a minute ago, the messages that we're given. So put on a brave face, push through it. Boys don't cry. You wear your emotions on your sleeve. Pull yourself together.
Yep.
These are all words that we use all the time, messages that we hear. And what do those messages tell us? They tell us to hold in, swallow, sit on, stuff emotions, and that emotions are inconvenient and intolerable. And we've got busier, better, more important things to do than feel our emotion.
And what are some repercussions of that if we're maybe taught all the time, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, stop crying, what are some downstream repercussions of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, my initial answer is, well, think about that. That is going to cause us to actually bottle up and hold feelings in our body. And that takes a certain amount of energy, right? I talk about in the body something called body armor, which is the physical way that we hold emotions down. That could be through holding our breath or tensing our jaw, tensing our shoulders and our neck, our fists, our chest. We physically can push and hold emotion within us. But in addition to that, we have to ask ourselves the question of why should we feel hard feelings, right? Like, why do it? It's really hard work. It's hard work, right? Why put ourselves through that, right? And so I think that there's many answers to that, but quickly, a few of them are the choices and behaviors that we engage in to avoid our emotions. They take us away from ourselves, our present moment, the people in our lives who we love and want to be present with. And, usually they take us away from our better or best selves. And then another reason is, well, we feel our hard emotions because hard emotions can hold us hostage if we don't feel them. And what does that mean? Well, think about it. If we're afraid of feeling shame, rejection, embarrassment, failure, if we're afraid of feeling those feelings, then we may not take chances in our lives. We may not take leaps and live our life to its fullest because we might play it safe. I know all about that, right? I spent a lot of my young adulthood playing it safe and retreating from anything that might be messy. So I know a lot about that. And then our emotions can also hold the people we love hostage. So when we stuff our emotions, when we swallow and sit on them, that we can kind of do that for a little while, but we know intuitively that comes back up and out and at other people in our lives. And that's not fair, right? If we don't want to feel our emotions, why should our family?
Yeah. And for listeners, I know immediately I can think of some obvious behaviors that we might do to numb or avoid, to not feel or to feel a different feeling. But can you give some examples of what some of those behaviors might be that humans will participate in to not feel things?
Yeah. And I break that down into 4 parts in my book. So the first 2 are more common to us, right? So first, the idea of numbing. So we can physically numb feelings that we don't want to feel. That can be through food, alcohol, prescription, recreational drugs. The next is distracting, and that's a pretty common and very, very familiar way that we push down feelings. Think about our phones, right? Like at our fingertips. When you and I are done with this podcast today, we're going to pick up and turn on our phones, and we're going to have notifications beeping and buzzing at us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Breaking news, texts, emails, social media posts, right? I mean, there's just so much that even if we're not aware of it, if an uncomfortable feeling is brewing inside of it, how easy is
Yep.
it to be like, oh, I got to check my work emails, right? Or I got to, I want to check that post.
Yeah, work is a way that people avoid feeling a lot.
Work is a way. So is like cleaning, right? You have a feeling bubble up. Maybe you're going to go clean out your cupboard. You have a feeling come up. Maybe you go take a run. I wish I was that kind of person, right? I mean, that's like an awesome constructive way to
constructive coping mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah, for me, it's
Yeah.
yoga. I'm going to go do
Yeah.
some handstands. I don't really like this feeling right now.
Which is awesome. But just to be aware, right? Like the real key to it is mindfulness, right? To be aware that right now I'm going to push away a feeling and go do a headstand, right? Like just that awareness is huge. Just that awareness is big stuff. Yeah. And then I'll be quick, the two other ways that are less familiar that
take your time.
Okay. That we push away feelings are, I talked about the body armor. We actually have talked about these. So guarding and protecting our bodies, push down feelings. And then the fourth way is retreating. So we retreat from any situation that might bring up tough feelings.
Now, as you were saying that, I couldn't help because I'm a practitioner. And so I know some practitioners listen and then also some patients listen. But as a practitioner who does some body work, I do some cranial sacral, although I do a lot more kind of talking with patients and teaching them how to get in their body and feel so they can go home and do that. But I immediately am thinking, and I know you do body work, about how I can feel, even if a patient can't articulate that they guard or hold or have these emotional adhesions. I can certainly feel when I get my hands on them immediately. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that and how some of your work with your hands on patients and helping them to kind of feel the mind body connection? How has that informed, how you practice and your book and everything we're talking about essentially?
Sure. So you'll have people that come in, patients that come in that are very ripe for body work. And what I mean by that is they'll jump on the table and they'll just be there and they're ready and they're willing and they're describing and feeling and experiencing themselves. And then you'll have folks that are interested, like, I'm really curious about body work. But they'll get on the table and you can see they're struggling a bit to find themselves and to feel much of anything. And in those circumstances, what I will do is I'll use a body scan just to walk them through the idea of kind of getting into their body. So starting head to toe, feeling different parts of their body, tensing and releasing. But then next, I'll put my hands on, ask them if they could feel my hands. That's a place to start, because usually somebody can feel something on top of themselves. They'll feel their hands, right? And then ask them if they can feel themselves under my hands. And if that's hard too, what I'll do is I'll just tell them what I'm feeling with my hands, right? And for example, somebody who might have tension in let's say their sternum, for example, I'll just say, I feel like your breath is quiet and soft. I feel some hardness, almost like a shell here under my hands. And sometimes by just giving them words, even though they're not their own words, right? Because their own words are more powerful. But even just giving them my words will give them permission to feel. And it opens the door like, oh, okay, yeah. And that oftentimes, and that could happen over a number of sessions. It's not like it happens immediately, but giving somebody the vocabulary to start off will help them find their own vocabulary.
Yeah, absolutely. I use a framework sometimes with patients that I call notice, name, story, shift. And so we notice, and again, everybody's different, right? So some patients come in and they essentially are feeling too much, and I'm using quotes because who's to say it's too much, but they're describing it as I'm feeling too much in my body. And then some patients are so in their heads, they don't feel anything. So I'm trying to kind of figure out in the beginning where they're at in that spectrum. And so we work on noticing either the feeling or noticing the emotion, and then naming it and looking for more explicit names. And maybe we use a feelings wheel or some tool essentially to give it that language. And then I have them notice what story they're telling themselves. And then because the story is going to follow the state of our nervous system, we do something to shift their nervous system to shift and flip that story. So notice, name, story, shift. And so, yeah, it might be headstands or a breath work or something calming, but essentially you're shifting the nervous system state, and then it kind of works backward. You're going to change the story in your mind, and then all of a sudden you're not feeling that feeling you didn't want to feel, and you didn't, have to use a less healthy numbing tool. So, yeah, it's that similar experience. I thought you might like that. Yeah.
I love that a lot. Yeah. I was just thinking as you were describing that, even just what you're helping somebody realize is that when they come through your door, what they're feeling in the present moment is what you're helping them work with. It's like you're guiding somebody to really acknowledge and experience their present moment, whether that feels good or whether it feels bad, right?
Yeah. And trying to take away some of the judgment around that and have more compassion with the feeling is what it is. I love that. Let's work with the feeling. Yeah.
Let's work with what we've got. Yeah.
I love, I was going to ask something else, but there's a part in the book that I think I even have like flagged where you talk about feelings as waves. And I'm such a water person that I was just so drawn to this, but maybe you can, I don't know if I could find it. Oh yeah. The only way is through riding the wave. Our only hope in staying with an outlasting difficult felt emotion is to ride its wave. And you do this you have so many great exercises in here. Honestly, I highly recommend this to anyone listening. But can you talk through a little bit of that riding the wave of emotion for us a little bit?
Yeah. So think about when you're in the throes of a difficult emotion. So let's say you're feeling profound loss or grief, right? And sometimes in that moment, it is hard to see the forest for the trees, right? We think that this feeling is going to last forever, right? But when there's feelings that are more pleasurable, we actually feel the opposite way, is we'd like to grab them and freeze them in time. So it's almost with a feeling that we want to keep, we can understand that feelings are fleeting. But with a feeling that's really hard, for some reason we can't always see that. And we feel like it's going to overwhelm us or overtake us. So one of the ways that we learn about our emotional life and our emotional health is an awareness that emotions are like waves, meaning that they have a crescendo, a peak, a dissipation, and kind of coming to a close. And if we can trust through experience, and that's a lot of what my book is gaining trust and experience that we can actually sit through feelings, that we can actually outlast feelings. So when we have a trust and a knowing that our emotions are waves, we're actually more willing to ride the wave or try to ride the wave.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, it helps immensely, I think, to have another human being to co-regulate with through that process. And so if you're sitting with a patient or if I'm sitting with a patient, they might articulate to me, whatever this feeling, let's go with your example of this loss or sadness or grief. It feels so bad that it's going to kill me or I'm going to lose my mind. Like we can feel so badly that we don't think it will ever get out of it. But to your point, if someone else can be present and sit and be in it with you and kind of remind you that it is a wave and we will work through it, I think that can be very powerful. And again, sometimes if patients have been told, push through it, don't feel it, don't talk about it. Oh, here it's societally acceptable to scroll on your screen or drink alcohol and numb it. Well, yeah, of course, it's going to feel very scary the first time you try to ride the wave. You're going to feel like you're going to drown. So I love that you're giving that language and framework and exercises. I'd love if you could maybe tell us a little more. Essentially, we're kind of tasking listeners who maybe are not working with us to take some responsibility for their feelings and emotions. Maybe they're hearing this and they're like, why should I do that still? Like, why do I need to be responsible for how I feel? I could just blame so-and-so for making me feel that way. Can you walk us through a little bit about kind of taking responsibility for our emotions and our feelings? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share a quick story that I share in the book about myself. When for the first 3 or 4 months of COVID, my family was living in Spain, and we were in a very just a crazy restrictive lockdown. We couldn't leave the apartment for months, and
Wow.
yeah, it was really intense. A month before COVID, my mother had passed away, and
I'm sorry.
it was thank you, but it was just a really, really tough time in my life. And I was stuck in this apartment with my husband and my 2 kids, living abroad with so much fear around what COVID was, living abroad, and having just lost my mom. So even though I'm somebody who talks about feelings and works with feelings and helps people process and feel their feelings, I was spewing. Yeah, like my container was so small. I was spewing my feelings, and I had to really take a hard look at myself and say, whoa, like as I said before, if I don't want to feel my feelings, why in the world would my family want to feel them? And I had to take responsibility for this pain and this loss and this fear and this grief that was just bubbling and like a volcano. But I had to do the work to sit with that, to talk about it, to feel it, to process it, and to own it in order to not throw it out into the world.
Yeah. And when we apply, I always say I try to practice what I preach, because when we apply that to our own experience, that's when we learn even more so how to help others through that process. So I'm sure when you work with patients now working through grief, having that layer of your own experience of working through it provides, that experiential toolkit that you wouldn't have otherwise had, despite how uncomfortable it might have been for you in that time. Yeah. Do you have a go-to? So let me preface this with saying I also, with patients, on top of the notice, name, story, shift, I'll often start to talk to them about how essentially our breath is something that we can use to kind of intervene. Essentially, it's a connection between our mind and our body that we have some amount of control over if we choose to engage with our breath in this way. And so I'm wondering if you have a practice, like I have a breathwork practice that I'll explain to patients. Okay, when we start to, let's think about our body as one side of a coin and our mind as the other side of the coin. When we start to maybe tell ourselves an anxious story, or on the flip side of the coin, when we start to feel in our body a maybe tense sensation, we have that breath to kind of intervene between both sides of that coin. And there's usually a moment where if we can start to practice noticing, we can pause and say, okay, I'm feeling that tension, or I'm telling myself that anxiety story. And we can implement something like a breathwork practice to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, calm ourselves down, essentially. So for me, breathwork is a really powerful, quick, easy, powerful practice. Do you have something that you could either walk us through or just mention that was your go-to in that time of, I'm locked down at COVID, my window of tolerance is low, I'm exploding, I got to take responsibility for my feelings? What's your go-to practice?
Well, for the breath, and you're right on. I love everything that you're saying about the breath being this intersection between mind and body. A breath work exercise that I love is a noticing. I actually call it the breath wave visualization. But it begins with the concept of just noticing. So there are a lot of breath exercises out in the world that are fantastic, that sort of talk you through a particular routine or give you directions on how to breathe, in and out. But the wave meditation is simply, how do we just notice the inhale and exhale without any intervention or any agenda or any judgment or any expectation? And I'll walk you through the visualization. You start imagining yourself on a beach, near a body of water, and just visualizing, just noticing the waves rolling onto the sand and the wave rolling back into the sea. So just noticing how each wave is different. Some waves roll onto the beach, some waves just kiss the surface of the beach, and then they roll back. And you have no control. You have no control over the waves and how they come and when they come and with what kind of intensity. And then I'll ask the person to shift that awareness to their breath and to imagine the inhale as the wave coming in and the exhale as the wave going out. And to try to notice and observe your breath with the same distance or the same detachment that you did with the ocean. So you don't have any control of the breath. You're not trying to control the breath. The way you're breathing is perfect. It's just how it should be. And just noticing the inhale and the exhale.
I love that.
In that exercise, there are a lot of little gems, right? In the sense of, gives you the idea of observing ourselves without judgment, without agenda. It just tickles this, of how we don't have control over things in our lives, right? So it's sort of a letting go of control, as well as practicing the idea of observation and awareness without judgment and agenda.
Yeah, you got to trick them into mindfulness.
Yep.
Trick all your patients into mindfulness.
Yeah.
I call it positive manipulation.
Yes.
My patients will laugh at that because I say it all the time.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yes, because for sure, some patients will say, I cannot do a breathwork practice. And definitely when I have patients with a history of trauma, sometimes a breathwork practice where you are controlling can be really triggering, and it's not the right next step for everyone. So just that noticing exercise, I think, is really wonderful. It's a great entry point. And what are some things that you've heard from patients that they might say come up as far as bodily sensations, maybe if they're new to doing a practice like that? What are some of the things that they might notice in their body? And let's even give the example of maybe someone who has a little bit of health anxiety and they're like, is this bad? Is there something wrong with me that I'm feeling this? What are just some kind of common human experiences when you do a practice like that that you might start to notice?
Well, the idea of hyper focusing on the body or on a particular feeling is common. And it can be very anxiety provoking, right? So when for some people, bringing the awareness inward can actually heighten your anxiety, right? Because you feel a feeling and that might feel like a red flag of why am I feeling this feeling in my gut? Is something wrong with me? Am I about to have a panic attack? It can be very anxiety provoking. And so, one of the very important aspects of body work is to create not just a trusting, attuned relationship with my patient and myself, but for them to have that attuned and trusting relationship with their body.
Mm.
And so that, to me, that is very important. And sometimes by just acknowledging and getting through an anxiety, a feeling of anxiety, can be so empowering, right? Just a single episode. If you can sit with somebody, maybe with your hands on them, or just again, like you were saying, just being with somebody in through a wave of anxiety, and you make them aware of what they're experiencing, just that can be big stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like because you come out of it with an awareness and a trust that you just got through something hard. And it was, and it wasn't easy. It didn't feel good, but it was okay.
Yeah. I think that's anxiety and my patients who struggle with panic and panic attacks. It's a very good example of the first couple times that we meet, they're definitely hesitant, and I'm cautious too around titrating practices like this, but they're definitely hesitant to do anything that might kind of move the needle in their nervous system state because it feels dysregulating just to change state a little bit. And so a huge part of it is, yes, recognizing, okay, I'm safe. This doesn't feel good, but I'm going to get through it. I have someone here to guide me, whether I'm on the phone with them or they're in the office. Like they are taken care of in the sense that they're not going to die, because that is it's a very strong feeling of like, Dr. Kelly, like I'm going to die. I can't breathe, or I'm having a heart attack. Right. And I've had a panic attack myself. So I know what that feels like before I had it. I didn't know what that felt like for patients. So I'm grateful for that uncomfortable experience, but you feel like you're going to die. It's awful. And to provide that context, where you're breathing, I'm here, we're going to get through this. And then to come out the other side, yeah, you feel like, all right, I know I can survive that. And now let's talk about tools to like not have that happen again, because you want to avoid it, obviously, but it can be a power.
I like to throw some people come into my work, mind body medicine, body work, with this expectation or this idea that it's all about calming down, and it's all about finding this place of Zen and this place of, some kind of enlightenment, whatever that means. And I don't mean to sound, I want to throw that out the window, right?
Yeah.
I want to throw those expectations out the window, because yes, those are wonderful states. If we can get to a state of calmness and peace and ease in our body, like that's awesome. But a lot of what we're working with is a nervous system, like you said, that is just on fire. And so we have to begin to sit with ourselves and to get comfortable with the discomfort, right? And if we can start to accept our body in a state of anxiety, again, that's big stuff, because we sit with it and we can allow ourselves to participate in it, to feel it, and to move through it, and to realize that it's just a wave. It's just a wave.
And it's our biology protecting us. It's our nervous system responding to keep us safe. It's not pathological, even though it might feel uncomfortable. I often show, actually, you you introduced heart math to me. I forget who I'm talking to for a moment. So I should rewind for listeners, in our mind body shift at UB, you had introduced us in one of our rotations to heart math. And I later on went and got certified as a trauma provider through heart math. And so essentially one of the breathwork practices I will do with patients is around, heart coherence and focusing on a feeling of gratitude and bringing it into your heart space. And that's a pretty accessible experience, and people feel really good after doing it. But long story short, I think teaching a patient how to notice their nervous system state, and again, name it and kind of notice when you're activated, helps you to see that it's not a pathology. And I'll show the polyvagal kind of sympathetic activation chart and the autonomic nervous system ladder. And I'll start to educate patients around, okay, know what your default state is. I'm someone who, when I'm threatened, I go into fight. And patients might not know that about me. And I share, like, I'm someone that can get triggered into anger. I have my yoga practice so that I'm able to have a better capacity to not get triggered into anger, and then also to pull it back in. But notice what state is your default state and start to name it. Maybe you're someone who's more in shutdown, dorsal vagal shutdown, depression, and lack of motivation state. And just taking some power away from this and knowing you're going to move in and out. You're a human being. Life is going to feel rough. You're going to have those waves, and you're going to move in and out, up and down the ladder. And our goal is not to stay in ventral vagal, safe and calm and compassionate and joyful all the time. Our goal is to have all of the experiences of being a human, because you cannot only have one side of the coin. You just can't. So I think heart math does a good job of helping patients to kind of feel the parasympathetic and feel the sympathetic. And especially if they can see on some sort of feedback, whether it's on a screen and wearing a device. I don't use a lot of devices in my practice. I'm really trying to get them to kind of feel it themselves, but some sort of feedback, whether it's you as the practitioner or noticing their breath, that says, hey, you got into that triggered state. Let's practice that parasympathetic muscle. I'm wondering, where did you come up with the feeling muscle? Is that how you've kind of always referred to this process, as a muscle?
No, the title came late in the book's process.
Oh, okay.
But not to say I was using the term feeling muscle throughout the book. So I guess, the title just came later that, oh, I'm going to name it this. But the feeling muscle, I've always worked and seen life through the lens of the body. And so I always wanted to write a book through the lens of the body and on body work. But I felt for years, I thought that I would have to fold it into something more interesting, right? Like a mom, as a mom folds in some vegetables into the spaghetti sauce, right?
Yeah.
I thought that that's what I had to do with the body work, because it just couldn't stand on its own. And so
that's so interesting that you felt that way, because I feel like it's so necessary to have something like this, which highlights the body work and how do you work with your body to get through emotion.
Well, it took me a while to find the confidence for the book to stand on its own. I have to be honest about that, but I'm so glad that I did. And there was a moment, I'll share this with you. There was a moment where I have a loved one who was dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder, which I also have. And I was sitting in on his treatment, and the psychologist was talking about trying to explain to this young person how to sit with the discomfort of not doing the ritual. Right. So, right. And the psychologist was talking about it in this really cognitive way, very abstract way. You have to sit with your discomfort of your anxiety.
Yeah.
And I saw this young person really struggle with, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I knew that the anxiety that this young person was feeling was physical. It was a physical discomfort.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment, I was working on the book, but it was in that moment where I was like, I need to do this. I need to write this.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to ask why, why now? How is the timing right for writing a book right now? But that kind of answers it, that it was one of those aha moments of the world needs access to this information that I've been using with patients,
Yeah.
and other people would benefit from knowing about it. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would do so much work with perimenopause and menopause. I do feel like I want to ask, at least kind of one direct question
Mm-hmm.
around maybe for a woman in midlife who is overwhelmed or maybe identifies with burnout in some way, and just that state, right? That midlife state of it's all happening right now. I'm doing all the things for my kids and my career, and now I'm a caregiver and I'm just overwhelmed. I'm tapped out. What And essentially their feelings maybe have gotten a little louder. What is something that you might say or do? Maybe it's a hands-on activity. If you were to sit with that woman who's just at her breaking point of overwhelm right now, and what might you share with her? Whether it's short exercise or a piece of wisdom around this age and this transition, and maybe why her feelings are louder and why that overwhelm is so much right now.
Mm-hmm. What comes to mind for me is, just to preface a little bit, this summer I did a shaman workshop at Kripalu.
Ooh.
And one of the comments that one of the shaman made in that workshop just like penetrated my soul, right? And as you're describing this person, I mean, I'm going through all of these things that you're talking about, right? This sort of midlife experience. Your body's changing, your life is changing. He said, life, and I'm paraphrasing, life is not meant to be comfortable. And that just, like I said, it kind of plowed through me, because I have to admit, still at my age, I think there's a part of me, with all my experience, there's a part of me that really hopes and wishes and wants the sort of goal of life to be ease and comfort and happiness, and to be able to kind of wrap something up with a bow and just say, like, I
Mm.
did it, or and I just don't think that that is the message that we're meant
Yeah.
to take on. I think that the idea that we can do hard things and feel hard feelings and make it through hard times is really something to take in, and it's big stuff, right? It's big stuff to know that that's maybe what part of what life is about, and that our
Mhm.
challenges and these hard times are guiding us in some way. Maybe there's some insight and some wisdom and some compassion and some empathy that we will gain from the hard stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I do what I do. I just recorded an episode on SSRIs and depression, and how I'm seeing the kind of the darker side of the numbing that's happening, day in and day out in my practice, where now people don't have these tools, and they haven't been taught how to use their feeling muscle. And I do think it's part of life. I do think life is hard. I do think life can also be beautiful and joyful. But I also hear from so many women that if you numb the hard, or I'm sure you know this too, if we don't have more difficult life experiences to strengthen us and give us resilience, we don't tend to have as much joy and as much of those moments of that wonder and awe and gratitude and connection to something bigger. And unfortunately for us humans, the good and the bad, they go hand in hand. And I really believe that.
I'm so glad that you're saying that, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, like, gosh, have I been a bit of a downer in talking so much about hard stuff? But You're 100% right. And I will say from my own experience of welcoming in feeling, going from somebody who was a chronic number and retreater, but welcoming in feeling the feelings of love and joy and wonder and awe and beauty and gratitude are so much greater. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you for reminding me and reminding us all,
You're
because
welcome.
that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, before we leave, I know it's been probably about an hour. I'm losing track of time because I could honestly talk to you for so many hours. I would love to know one last question, and then I'll ask you, where everyone can find you. But what would you say to someone that's been taught their whole life that their feelings are too much?
Mm, gosh. I mean, there's so much that I could say to that person, but I guess firstly, your feelings are who you are, right? Like your feelings are your present moment.
Yeah.
Right? Your feelings are your present moment. And so if you've been told that you're too much, well, then, okay, maybe your present moment is a lot, and maybe it's grand, right? And maybe it's wonderful, and maybe it's really hard, but that you're just giving yourself permission to feel your present moment and to feel what's real for you and to feel who you are. Give yourself permission to be that person. Yeah, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot. And we're told the messages are, we should manage and we should regulate our emotions. But that doesn't mean that has to take away our big feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
And I also think we live in a society where often those big feelings just aren't welcome, whether it's in intimate relationships or the workplace, family dynamics. To your point, we have to take responsibility for our feelings and not like vomit them all over everyone else. But
Mm-hmm.
also at the same time, sometimes it's the people around us or the society around us that's telling us to turn it off, and our feeling is actually appropriate given the situation and the circumstance. And if we're able to feel it in our body and move through it, breathe through
Mm-hmm.
it, and access and integration of said feeling, then that's how we are then not stuck with that emotional adhesion or the physiological sequelae of holding that feeling in. So much of autoimmune disease I work with is from, not speaking our truth or
Mm-hmm.
holding
Mm-hmm.
things in or, doing something that's not aligned with what brings you joy, right? And just suppressing the feeling. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it is our responsibility to be able to express what we're feeling inside and to give that life, right?
Mm,
To give that breath. But that's big stuff. And
yeah.
it takes commitment and intention to be able to do it, but it's so worthwhile.
Yeah, I can't help but I have to ask one last thing because I feel like
Yeah.
you'll have a good perspective around this. When, say, we're working with someone and we are working on them being able to have capacity to kind of move in and out of these nervous system states and go with these waves of emotion and feeling. I think naturopathic medicine and kind of just nature cure in general, the foundation of naturopathy essentially provides tools, habits, daily practices, focus on diet, getting outside, all of that essentially provides a way that your window of tolerance can be increased, or essentially so that your capacity is more. You are essentially more, your mind body is more resilient. So you have the ability to maybe do some of this hard work. So, can you just speak to that a little bit through your years of working with patients, the impact that kind of diet and lifestyle has on
Yeah.
our ability to do the feelings work and work with
Yeah.
that muscle?
Yeah. I look at it in terms of the distinction between living a mindful life and living a mindless life, right? And so there are so many ways that naturopathic medicine can guide us and help us live a mindful life. And that can be, as you mentioned it, in so many ways, whether it's our nutrition and moving our body every day, and taking our, if we have herbs and supplements, and doing our mind body exercises. There's so many ways that we can build our mindful life. And there's also so many ways that we can be mindless, right? But the more mindful we are, the more intention that we bring to ourselves and bring to our lives and bring to our practices, our everyday practices, that will be a foundation and a ground for us to be strong and willing and wanting and non-judgmental to ourselves, kinder to ourselves, compassionate, for us to be able to feel our feelings and to experience our feelings and to stay with them.
I love that. Yeah, I think in the beginning of my career, it's interesting because in the state of Connecticut, as listeners know, we don't prescribe, but we're trained because in some states we can prescribe. So in Connecticut, especially, I think you essentially have to focus more on your vitalistic therapies and your diet and your lifestyle and herbs and homeopathy and counseling and all of that, mind body. And as a result, when I first graduated, I was very much thinking, patients are going to come in and we're going to cure this thing, with natural therapies essentially. And yes, that's true, but you're so spot on that so much of what we do is around building mindfulness, and it's around waking up to the fact that you have control over your health and that your belief around your health matters, and the things you do every day for your health or against your health matter. And it's really an exercise in mindfulness. And the more that I practice naturopathic medicine and working with, complex chronic conditions, it still comes back to those basic, simple daily practices and principles. And mindfulness is the foundation of all of it. It's the first seed of health we work on here. So I love that. That's such a good answer.
Yeah. Well, it is. It is our foundation. And that has always, to me, been the strength of naturopathic medicine. The foundation that naturopathic medicine can offer somebody and guide somebody toward.
Yeah.
It's impactful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if there's anything else that you want to share with us, please do so now before we wrap up. And if not, share with us if listeners would like to get the Feeling Muscle, where can they get the book? Where can they find you if they want to know more about you and your work? And how could they reach you if they would like to?
So my website is www.drjennrapkin.com. And my book is available currently on Amazon. I have a paperback and an ebook version, and I'm hoping actually to have an audio book out soon, in a few months.
Awesome.
And I would like to say one thing, which is to you, Dr. Kelly, is that what you have created and the community that you've created and what you're giving to us every single day by being present and being engaged. I'm just in awe of it. And I just want to thank you for creating this and putting so much of yourself behind it. And I have always, I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but I've always seen you as just a naturopathic rock star. And you are. And
Thank you.
It's so cool. It's just so cool. Yeah.
Thank you. When I lectured at the CNPA and I saw you in the audience, I was like already all sweaty and nervous. Then I got even more nervous. And it meant so much to me when you gave me a hug after and said that you were proud of me. So thank you. That means the world. And I'm really proud of you.
That means a lot too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation with Dr. Rapkin. If there's one message I hope you take with you, it's this: your feelings are not a flaw in your biology. They are your biology. They are waves, they are signals, and they are invitations back to yourself. The more we learn to feel what is true in our bodies without numbing, without pushing down, without swallowing whole, the more capacity we build to live the full spectrum of being human. This is why I do all of the work that I do. You can find Dr. Jenn, her clinical work, and her beautiful book, The Feeling Muscle, at drjennrapkin.com or by visiting the link in today's show notes. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this deeper work with me. I'll see you next week. Have a great day.